You know what's hilarious? The people who look the richest are usually broke. And the people who are actually building real wealth, you'd never know it by looking at them. I'm talking about your coworker who drives a 15-year-old Camry, but somehow has $400,000 in investment accounts. Or your neighbor who still uses a flip phone from 2010, but owns 3 rental properties free and clear. These people are getting obscenely wealthy, and nobody has any idea because they don't look the part. Meanwhile, the guy in your office with the brand new BMW and the Rolex, he's got $247 in his savings account, and he's one missed paycheck away from financial disaster. But everyone thinks he's crushing it because he looks successful. Here's what nobody tells you about building real wealth. The fastest way to get rich is to make sure nobody knows you're getting rich. Because the moment people think you have money, they start expecting you to spend it. And spending money is the opposite of building wealth. My name is Mike, and I spend way too much time thinking about stealth wealth, financial psychology, and why the people who look poor are often richer than the people who look rich. If you're someone who's tired of staying broke while trying to look successful, or if you want to build real wealth without everyone in your life suddenly expecting you to pay for dinner every time you go out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you understand how to get rich without becoming everyone's personal ATM. Let's start with something that's going to make some people uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. The reason most people stay broke is because they're obsessed with looking rich. They need everyone to know they're doing well. They need the validation. They need people to look at them and think, wow, they must be successful. So they buy the expensive car. They lease the luxury apartment. They wear the designer clothes. They go to the trendy restaurants and post about it on Instagram. And every single dollar they spend on looking successful is a dollar they can't invest in actually becoming successful. There's a term for this in psychology: conspicuous consumption. It's when people buy things not because they need them or even want them, but because they want other people to see them buying expensive things. It's pure status signaling, and it's one of the most effective ways to stay poor forever. Here's the reality that nobody wants to hear. Building wealth requires you to live below your means. Not at your means, below your means, and that means you're going to look less successful than you actually are. Your lifestyle is going to lag behind your net worth, and you need to be completely okay with that, or you'll never build real wealth. Think about it this way. Every dollar you spend trying to look rich is a dollar that can't compound and grow over time. If you spend $50,000 on a car to impress people who don't care about you, that's not just $50,000 gone. That's potentially $200,000 or $300,000 in lost wealth over the next 20 years because you didn't invest that money. But here's where it gets interesting. The people who actually build wealth understand something profound. Nobody is paying attention to you anyway. Everyone is too busy worrying about their own lives to care what car you drive or what brand of shoes you wear. The validation you're seeking by spending money on expensive things? It doesn't exist. Nobody cares. The guy you're trying to impress with your new watch? He didn't even notice you were wearing it? The woman you're trying to show your success to with your luxury car? She forgot about it 5 seconds after you drove past. You're spending thousands of dollars for validation that never comes. Now, I'm not saying you should live like a homeless person and never enjoy anything. That's not what stealth wealth is about. What I'm saying is that you should be strategic about where you spend money, and you should never spend money just to impress other people, because that's a losing game that keeps you broke forever. Let's talk about the single biggest wealth-building move that nobody wants to hear about: driving a car that's beneath you. Here's a fact that's going to piss off a lot of people. The average new car payment in America is over $700 per month. For trucks and SUVs, it's routinely over $900. People are spending $10,000 to $12,000 per year just on car payments. Not insurance, not gas, not maintenance, just the payment itself. Now, what if instead of spending $700 a month on a car payment, you bought a reliable used car for $8,000 cash and invested that $700 monthly? Let's do the math that dealerships really don't want you to do. Over 10 years, investing $700 per month at a 7% return gives you roughly $122,000. Over 20 years, you're looking at $347,000. Over 30 years, $852,000. Let me say that again. The difference between driving a new car and driving a paid-off used car is potentially $852,000 over your working lifetime. That's not hyperbole. That's just basic mathematics. But here's what's fascinating about this move. Nobody knows you're building wealth by driving that 10-year-old Honda. Your coworkers think you're just being cheap or that you can't afford something better. Meanwhile, you're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments while they're making payments on depreciating assets. This is stealth wealth at its finest. You look financially average or even below average, but your net worth is growing exponentially while theirs stays stuck at zero. Now, some of you are thinking, Mike, I need a reliable car. I can't just drive some beater that breaks down all the time. And you're absolutely right. I'm not telling you to buy a car that doesn't work. I'm telling you to buy a 5 to 10-year-old Toyota or Honda with 80,000 miles on it that will run for another 150,000 miles with basic maintenance. These cars exist everywhere. They're not sexy, they're not exciting, and they definitely won't impress your neighbors. But they'll get you from point A to point B reliably while you build actual wealth instead of fake wealth. The psychological shift you need to make is this. Your car is not a status symbol. It's not a reflection of your success. It's a tool that gets you to work so you can earn money to invest. That's it. Once you internalize that, the idea of spending $50,000 on a new car becomes absurd. Here's move number 2, and this one is going to make some people really uncomfortable. Stop trying to live in the nicest place you can barely afford, and instead live in the nicest place you can easily afford while banking the difference. The average American spends about 30% of their income on housing. Financial experts say you shouldn't spend more than 28% to 30%. But here's what the people building real wealth do. They spend 15% to 20% of their income on housing and invest the difference. Let's say you make $75,000 a year. After taxes, you're taking home about $4,650 per month. Most people would look at that and think, I can afford about $125 a month for rent or a mortgage payment. But what if instead you found a place for $950 a month? Maybe it's smaller, maybe it's in a less trendy neighborhood, maybe it doesn't have granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, but it's safe, it's clean, and it meets your actual needs. That $475 difference per month might not sound like much, but invested over time, it's absolutely massive. Over 10 years at 7% returns, that's $82,000. Over 20 years, it's $247,000. Over 30 years, you're looking at $570,000. Think about that. The difference between living in a nice apartment and living in a very nice apartment could be over $500,000 in wealth over your working lifetime. But here's the psychological trick that keeps people from doing this. We're conditioned to think our living space is a reflection of our success. We think we need to live in the best neighborhood we can afford to prove we're doing well. We think our apartment or house is a status symbol that shows the world we've made it. But nobody cares where you live except you. Your friends aren't impressed by your apartment. Your family isn't measuring your success by your square footage. You're the only one who cares. And that caring is costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's what's even crazier. Some of the wealthiest people I know live in completely average houses, in completely average neighborhoods. Not because they can't afford better, but because they understand that money spent on housing is money that can't be invested. They'd rather have $2 million in their investment accounts than a $2 million house. Now, I'm not saying you should live in a dangerous area or a place that makes you miserable. Quality of life matters, but I am saying you should be honest about the difference between needs and wants. You need safe housing. You need functional appliances. You don't need vaulted ceilings and a chef's kitchen if you eat cereal for dinner 3 times a week. Here's move number 3, and this is where most people absolutely destroy their financial future without even realizing it. When you get a raise, pretend you didn't get a raise. This sounds ridiculous, but it's one of the most powerful wealth-building strategies that exists. Here's what normally happens when someone gets a raise. Let's say you're making $60,000 a year and you get bumped up to $65,000. That's an extra $5,000 annually, or about $312 per month after taxes. Most people immediately increase their lifestyle. They upgrade their apartment. They buy a nicer car. They start eating out more. They convince themselves they've earned the right to enjoy this extra money. And within a few months, they're spending every penny of that raise, and their savings rate hasn't changed at all. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's why people who make $200,000 a year often have the same amount of savings as people who make $50,000 a year. Their income goes up, their spending goes up by the same amount, and they stay broke at every income level. But here's what wealthy people do instead. When they get a $5,000 raise, they automatically redirect that entire amount to investments. They set up an automatic transfer so the money goes straight from their paycheck to their investment account before they ever see it. This is absolutely critical because of how compound interest works over time. That $312 per month invested at 7% returns becomes $152,000 over 20 years. Over 30 years, it's $385,000. And remember, this is from a single raise. Most people get multiple raises throughout their careers. If you do this with every raise you get, you're talking about potentially millions of dollars in additional wealth over your working lifetime. But nobody knows you're doing this because your lifestyle doesn't change. You're still living in the same apartment, driving the same car, wearing the same clothes. You just keep getting richer while looking exactly the same. The psychological breakthrough here is understanding that raises aren't permission to spend more. They're opportunities to save more. Your lifestyle should be based on your minimum acceptable standard of living, not on the maximum you can afford. Here's a perfect example. I know someone who started their career making $45,000 a year. They set their lifestyle at that level and committed to saving every raise they got. Over 15 years, their income increased to $110,000, but their lifestyle was still set at that $45,000 level. They were saving and investing $65,000 per year while living like someone making less than half their actual income. Nobody had any idea this person was wealthy. They still drove the same used car. They still lived in a modest apartment. They still packed lunches. But they had accumulated over $800,000 in investments by their late 30s. That's stealth wealth perfection. Move number 4 is something I call the reverse budget, and it's going to change how you think about money management completely. Most people budget like this. They list all their expenses, calculate what they need to survive, and try to save whatever's left over. Spoiler alert, there's never anything left over. This approach is financial quicksand that keeps you broke forever. Here's what actually works. Decide what percentage of your income you're going to save and invest first, then build your lifestyle around what's left. This is called paying yourself first, but most people don't understand how radical this approach actually is. Let's say you make $70,000 a year, and you decide you're going to save 30% of your income. That's $21,000 per year, or $1,750 per month. Most people would look at that and say, that's impossible. I can't afford to save that much. But here's the thing. Affordability is completely flexible based on your lifestyle choices. If you automate that $1,250 to go straight from your paycheck to your investment account, you're forced to live on what's left. And humans are incredibly adaptable. You'll figure out how to make it work. You'll find a cheaper apartment. You'll cook at home more. You'll cut subscriptions you don't use. You'll make it work because you have to. But if you try to save what's left over after paying all your bills and buying what you want, you'll never save anything because there's always something else to buy. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason this month is different. The reverse budget removes all of that. You pay yourself first and you live on what remains. And nobody has any idea you're doing this because your lifestyle doesn't scream wealth. You're just living normally while accumulating hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars over time. Here's what makes this strategy so powerful. When saving is the priority and spending is the variable, you actually start to enjoy the challenge of living on less. It becomes a game. How cheap can you get your grocery bill while still eating well? How many streaming services can you cut without missing anything important? How much can you save on insurance by shopping around? This gamification of frugality is what separates people who build wealth from people who stay broke. The broke people see frugality as deprivation. The wealthy people see it as a strategic game they're winning every single day. Here's move number 5, and this one is about increasing your income in ways that nobody expects or notices. Most people try to increase their income by getting promoted at their current job, and that's fine, but it's also incredibly slow and uncertain. You're dependent on your boss liking you, the company doing well, and a position opening up at the right time. But here's what smart people do instead. They build what I call a skill stack. These are valuable skills that you can monetize on the side while keeping your day job, and nobody at your company needs to know you're doing it. For example, you could learn how to build websites, There are thousands of small businesses that need websites, and they'll pay $2,000 to $5,000 for a basic site. You could do one website per month on weekends and generate an extra $30,000 to $40,000 per year. Or you could learn how to manage social media for local businesses. Most small business owners know they need to be on Instagram and Facebook, but they have no idea how to do it effectively. They'll pay you $500 to $1,000 per month to handle it for them. Get 3 or 4 clients, and that's an extra $24,000 to $48,000 annually. Or learn how to do basic video editing. Every company needs video content now, but most don't want to hire a full-time video editor. They'll pay freelancers $75 to $150 per hour. Even working just 10 hours a week, that's an extra $40,000 to $78,000 per year. The beauty of this approach is stealth. You're building wealth through side income, but nobody at your day job knows about it. You're not bragging about it on social media. You're just quietly making an extra $30,000 to $50,000 per year and investing all of it. Over 20 years, investing an extra $40,000 annually at 7% returns gives you $1.96 million. Over 30 years, you're looking at $4.5 million. And this is completely separate from your day job salary and retirement accounts. But here's what's critical about this strategy. You have to invest this money. If you use your side income to upgrade your lifestyle, you've completely missed the point. This money should go straight into investments where it can compound and grow. The psychological key here is keeping your side income invisible. Don't tell coworkers. Don't post about it on LinkedIn. Don't brag about how much you're making. Just quietly build the skill, quietly serve your clients, quietly invest the money, and quietly become wealthy while everyone thinks you're just another regular employee. Move number 6 is something most people completely ignore. Legal tax optimization that puts thousands of extra dollars in your pocket every year. Here's something that blows my mind. The average American pays way more in taxes than they need to because they don't understand how to use the tax code legally to their advantage. And I'm not talking about shady offshore accounts or tax evasion. I'm talking about basic strategies that are completely legal and available to everyone. First, max out your 401k or equivalent retirement plan. For 2024, the contribution limit is $23,000 if you're under 50. That's $23,000 of income that isn't taxed now. If you're in the 22% tax bracket, that's $560 in taxes you're not paying this year. But here's where it gets interesting. That $23,000 also grows tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes on any gains until you withdraw the money in retirement. Over 30 years at 7% returns, $23,000 becomes $175,000. If you do this every year for 30 years, you're looking at $2.6 million. Next, use a health savings account if you have a high deductible health plan. You can contribute $450 if you're single or $8,300 if you have family coverage. This money goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, and comes out tax-free if used for medical expenses. It's literally the best tax-advantaged account that exists. If you max this out every year and invest it properly instead of spending it on Band-Aids, you can easily have $300,000 to $500,000 in your HSA by retirement. That's money you can use for medical expenses in retirement without paying any taxes ever. Then there's the Roth IRA, which you should absolutely be using if you're eligible. You can contribute $7,000 per year. The money goes in after tax, but then grows completely tax-free forever. Over 30 years at 7%, that $7,000 becomes $53,000. Do it every year, and you're looking at $710,000 that you'll never pay taxes on. Add all of this up, and you're talking about potentially saving $10,000 to $15,000 per year in taxes through legal optimization. That's money that can be invested instead of sent to the government. Over 30 years, that's the difference between retiring comfortably and retiring wealthy. And here's the beautiful part. Nobody knows you're doing this. Using retirement accounts and HSAs isn't flashy. It doesn't impress anyone. It's completely invisible wealth building that compounds quietly over decades. Here's the final move, and it's probably the most important one because it touches every aspect of your financial life. You need to be extremely careful about who you let into your inner circle, because the people around you will either help you build wealth or prevent you from building wealth. This sounds harsh, but it's reality. If your friends expect you to always pick up the check at dinner, you're going to stay broke. If your family expects you to loan them money whenever they have a problem, you're going to stay broke. If your romantic partner expects you to fund an expensive lifestyle, you're definitely going to stay broke. Wealthy people are ruthless about protecting their financial boundaries. They say no to expensive outings they can't afford. They say no to family members asking for loans. They say no to romantic partners who want them to spend money they should be investing. And they do all of this while appearing completely normal and average. They don't announce that they're wealthy and protecting their assets. They just quietly maintain boundaries that allow them to continue building wealth. Here's a perfect example. Someone I know was building serious wealth in their 30s. They had accumulated about $300,000 in investments through aggressive saving and side income. But their family had no idea because this person still drove an old car, lived in a modest apartment, and never talked about money. When family members asked to borrow money, the answer was always, "I'm sorry, I don't have extra money to lend right now." It wasn't technically a lie. The money was invested and earmarked for future wealth building. It wasn't extra in the sense of sitting around doing nothing. This person's friends had no idea either. When the group wanted to go on an expensive trip, the answer was, "That's not in my budget right now." Again, technically true. The budget was maxing out retirement accounts and side hustle investing, not vacations. By maintaining these boundaries and keeping their wealth building completely invisible, this person was able to accumulate over $1 million by their early 40s, while everyone thought they were just financially average. The psychological shift here is understanding that you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you choose to spend or not spend your money. Your financial life is private. Your wealth building is private, and keeping it private protects it from people who would otherwise expect you to share it with them. Here's the brutal truth that ties all of this together. Building wealth requires you to be comfortable being misunderstood. People are going to think you're cheap. They're going to think you can't afford nice things. They're going to think you're missing out on life. And you have to be completely okay with that, because the alternative is trying to look wealthy while staying broke, and that's a losing game that destroys millions of people financially. The people who actually build wealth understand something profound. Financial success is invisible. Real wealth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't post on Instagram. It doesn't wear designer logos. It sits quietly in investment accounts, compounding year after year, decade after decade, until one day you wake up and realize you have the freedom to do whatever you want with your life. But getting there requires you to live below your means for years or decades while everyone around you thinks you're just average. And most people can't handle that psychological pressure. They need validation. They need recognition. They need people to know they're successful. And that need for validation keeps them broke forever. Look, I get it. Everything I just told you goes against what society teaches us about success. We're bombarded with messages that success means looking successful. We're taught that we should reward ourselves with nice things when we work hard. We're conditioned to believe that our possessions reflect our worth as people. But here's what actually happens when you follow society's advice about money. You stay broke while looking rich. You make payments on depreciating assets while people who drive worse cars accumulate millions in investments. You work until you're 70 because you spent your entire life funding a lifestyle instead of building wealth. Choice is yours. You can look rich and be broke, or you can look average and be wealthy. You can't do both. The math doesn't work. If you actually want to build wealth, if you genuinely want financial freedom, you have to be willing to let people misunderstand you. You have to be willing to drive the boring car, live in the modest apartment, skip the expensive dinners, and invest the difference. And then, 20 or 30 years from now, when your net worth is in the millions, and you have the freedom to design your life however you want, you can look back and realize that being misunderstood was the best financial decision you ever made. This video changed how you think about building wealth. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me which of these 7 moves you're going to implement first. I read every comment, and I want to know what's stopping you from building stealth wealth starting today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.